he left us money that I am not accessing much because I'm going to be leaving it to my children.
What is the balance on that right now?
It was $50,000. Now it is $20,000. So I touched it a little bit.
That's not a little bit. You took $30,000 out.
I am 44 years old and in Washington.
What do you do for a living?
I am a youth sports coach and I'm a substitute teacher.
Awesome. And how much do you make a year as a sports coach and how much a year as a substitute teacher?
I make about $12,000 as a sports coach and $12,000 as substitute teacher.
Okay, and those both salary or those hourly roles?
Those are hourly.
Okay, and what's the hourly pay on those? And how many hours a week are you working?
The sports coach is $25 and it is about 15 hours. Substitute teacher is about $21 an hour.
And how long have you been doing those for?
I've been coaching for about a year and a half and I've been subbing for about 6 months.
Okay, and what did you do prior to those?
I was a flight attendant, an international flight attendant.
What caused the dramatic shift of careers?
I wanted more of a personal life. I had flown and seen the world and I really enjoyed it, but I just wanted more of a personal life.
How much were you making a year before as a flight attendant?
I was making about $40,000 a year.
Oh, wow. Honestly, I thought flight attendants made a little bit more than that. What was your starting salary and how long were you a flight attendant for?
I started at like $19 an hour. And then after 5 years, they up you to $30 an hour. And then if you fly international, you can make up to $40 an hour.
So you must not have been working 40 hours a week then if you're getting paid $40 an hour and making $40,000 a year.
Because you have to rest so much.
So how many hours a week were you working?
Probably 30 flight hours a week.
How'd you kind of define your current financial situation on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being horrific, 10 being picture perfect.
It's a struggle. It's more of a struggle. I'm working on the ground, but I'm also going to school to become a teacher because it's a lot healthier lifestyle, teaching and coaching, and it has a retirement. So basically, it's a struggle, but the long-term goal will be what I want.
What age do you want to teach and what subject?
Junior high school. I'd like to teach history and coach cross-country running or basketball.
Then let's figure out how do we get you in a spot where you can teach comfortably and not be in a struggle situation when it comes to your finances. Before we dive into your current debts, you explained that you're struggling right now. Has it always been like that? Or what does your kind of financial situation look like over the last 5 to 10 years?
When I was going to college, I took out student loans because I was an out-of-state student. And it was really bad because the more classes that you take, the more expensive it is. And then you just keep taking out student loans. And so that just compounded. And pretty soon you have like a $50,000 student loan. And so that has been a real struggle for me through just about my whole life. When I was a flight attendant, they had not developed the forgiveness programs yet or the deferred programs yet. And so I was just constantly throwing money at the student loan. So another reason I'm going into teaching is to get the student loan forgiven.
So you're trying to go after the public student loan forgiveness program?
Yes.
Let's dive into your current debts. So debts, it looks like we have student loans about $50,000. Is that where that balance is right now?
Yes.
Okay, and it looks like your interest rate on that is about 5%, just a little bit above. It looks like it's about $53,342 according to the statement you sent me. At a 5.07% interest rate, it looks like. Credit cards. You said you have a credit card debt of $700. Is that still accurate right now?
Yes.
Okay, and how long have you been carrying a balance on your credit card for?
About a year.
About a year. And has it always been around $700 or where has that kind of been?
It's been about $1,500.
Okay, and so it's going down a little bit?
Yes, but slowly.
Slowly. Okay, and so with all this debt right now, student loans, sounds like have you just been paying the minimum payments on that for the last 15 years or what has your kind of mentality been towards the student loans?
Yes, minimum payment.
Okay, and have you ever made any extra payment to those at all or ever thought about it?
I haven't.
You haven't? Okay. And then the credit card, you had a balance for the last year on this credit card. What has your mentality been on the credit cards? And have you done anything to try to figure out how to get out of the credit card debt?
I was actually paying it to keep my credit score good.
So you're carrying a balance on your credit card to try to improve your credit score? That is the worst idea to do, frankly. When it comes to credit cards, if you're carrying a balance on your credit card, it's just not a good situation because you're paying a lot of interest on your credit card. I mean, this year you've been charged $63 in interest and we're 3 months through the year. So you're just continuing to pay interest. If you carried a balance on $1,000 for a year and it's a 29% interest rate, you're going to pay $300 roughly in interest over the course of the year. That is the wrong way to utilize credit cards, is carrying it. The first suggestion, we'll talk about this later on, is credit cards. The only way to properly use credit cards is if you have a credit card, you pay it off in full every single month, and you never pay interest on it.
Okay.
That's something we'll touch on later on. Besides that, do we have any other debts? Any car loans or anything else?
No.
And then let's dive into assets then. Assets right now, it looks like you said your current value of your car is $200. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And what kind of vehicle are you driving?
It's a Ford hybrid SUV.
What year is it?
2011.
Is it a Ford Escape?
Yes.
Those aren't worth $200.
Well, it has quite a few miles on it. It's 2011.
How many miles does it have on it?
400,000.
Dang, so you've run that up then.
Yes.
Okay. I was going to say, I don't see anything that's 400,000 miles on it. I didn't know that Escapes can make it that far.
It just keeps going. It has a hybrid. It's a hybrid. Just keeps going.
I would assume you get more than $200 for it, but that's what you put the value of it at. We'll leave it as that. And then retirement accounts. You said 401ks, IRAs, you have about $20,000 in investments. Is that mainly in your Roth IRA? Is that in a 401k? What type of accounts are those in?
It's in a Roth IRA.
Roth IRA. Okay. And how long have you been investing for?
Since I was like probably 28, 29. But I've had to pull a draw.
Oh, you've been pulling money out of your retirement accounts.
I had to.
What was the reason?
It was a marital reason.
Do you know how much money you pulled out at the time?
I think 15.
Oh, wow. So you pulled a lot of money out then. That definitely impacts your financial future and retirement, what that looks like with that kind of money pulled out. Okay. We have no non-retirement accounts and savings. How much do you have in your bank account right now?
About $1,000.
About $1,000? Okay. I see on this statement $843. Is that about right?
Yes.
Okay. So total assets we have is $21,043. And then on the total debt side, we have the credit card. That's about $700 balance, you said. And your student loans, which is $53,000. So we've got $53,954 worth of debt, $21,043 worth of assets, brings your net worth to negative $32,911. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
And have you ever calculated your net worth before?
I haven't.
Okay. What does that number kind of say to you right now?
It's what?
This kind of scares me for you, is being 44, having under $1,000 in your savings account. If your tire goes flat, if something happens to your car, you're kind of screwed right now. And we have a credit card balance of $700 that we've been carrying for the last year. What is your current approach to your financial situation? Have you done anything actively to try to change it?
Well, right now I'm having to work like 3 jobs, coaching sports, and then I'm substituting, but I cannot get a full-time substituting job until I get my teaching certificate. And then when there's breaks in the coaching and like spring breaks, school breaks, I have to find a job, like day job. Sometimes I think about getting, a full-time job with a salary and then working my way through school, but I think I only have another year to go. So that's why I'm sticking with the things that are giving me experience. And that will make me competitive to get into a good school district. So, do you have any other suggestions?
I think let's dive through your current financial situation, see where your budget looks like, your income and your expenses, and then we're going to kind of run into what suggestions I have from there. Well, before we dive into the numbers with your monthly budget, I want to kind of understand your upbringing and your parents' kind of situation with money. So, where did you grow up, and how did your parents handle their finances that you witnessed as you grew up?
My mother grew up in Oklahoma. She was Native American, so they didn't always have a lot of money on the reservation in Oklahoma. So just the opportunity to go up to Alaska and make that type of a living was really great for her. Being a single mother in like the 1980s, she was raising children. So I think we had like 3 houses in Alaska, but she still had to work on the oil spill in the summers. And so she pretty much just worked. She worked a lot, but she stayed in the education field to keep with the health benefits and keep a salary going. But now, which is good, but now that she is older, she has to live on her retirement, which, isn't much because the cost of living has gone up since then. And she's had some medical expenses. She's done well at certain points in her life, but she also has to really watch her budget. My father, I didn't grow up with, but he was a history teacher and played golf every single day of his life and our adult life. He was the opposite. I grew up on a farm in Burns, Oregon, on a 225-acre ranch, and poor. They were very poor. Went to Eastern Oregon College and started being a high school history teacher and a football and wrestling coach. And he hunted to pay for our family to get by, and he did nothing but save his whole life. So he saved. The only thing he splurged on was golf, and he saved his whole life in his retirement. And my mom's doing other things up in Alaska fishing and having a good time, but he's just saving and doing nothing his whole life. And he invested in Edward Jones, and he had really good, he made a lot of money, and he actually passed away, but he left us money that I am not accessing much because I'm going to be leaving it to my children. But I've made that choice. I don't touch that, so.
Okay, and so that is technically an asset of yours, the inheritance. What is the balance on that right now?
Well, it was $50,000, and now it is $20,000. So I touched it a little bit, but I'm not touching it anymore.
You touched a lot of that. That's not a little bit. You took $30,000 out. Amber, you can't sit here and lie to me and say you didn't touch much of it and it went from $50,000 down to $20,000. That's a lot of money. But okay, your goal, I love the goal is you want to leave money to your children. And I think that's a great thing to do and desire to have. We got to figure out how do we get you from this situation you're in right now to a spot where you can survive and live in retirement. Because right now, with $20,000 in retirement, unless you get public student loan forgiveness, which I think the acceptance rate on that is sub 5%, if I'm wrong, which I know that they're rolling out new programs stuff for that every day. If you don't get that and you don't start saving and investing for the future, you're going to be 65 and have $1,000 in your bank account and be living off of Social Security, which who knows if that's around in 20 years from now. And pension, hopefully you'll get a pension if you work for the school for, is it 20 years or what's the pension timeline for the district or area that you're trying to work in?
I'm not sure. I'm not totally for sure.
So that's something we'll talk about later too. But with the inheritance, put it on your balance sheet, that brings your net worth to negative $13,000 versus negative $33,000. But we got to figure out how do we live without that so that can compound, that can either sustain you in retirement or it can be passed on to your kids if your retirement is taken care of. Okay, so let's on that note, let's dive into your monthly budget then, because we got to figure out what your roadmap is moving forward. You said there's the option of getting a full-time job and then going to school for becoming a teacher on the side and then becoming a teacher full-time once you complete that? Or can you sustain right now being a sports coach and a substitute teacher and pay your bills? Off the bat, it's looking like we got to figure something else out because gross income is about $2,200 a month between your different gigs, and your net income is about $2,000 a month. So that gives you $2,000 a month to play with. And off the bat, we have our rent at $1,250.
Yes.
That leaves you, if you're making $2,000 a month, that leaves you with $750, and we haven't even talked about utilities, food, or anything else in between. And so that right now, that worries for me out the gate is we've got rent that's 62% of your net income. And the rule for rent to income, net income ratio is trying to be in around the 30% ballpark. So you don't have an income that can sustain that because, I mean, you can probably get rent for $600 a month, but you're going to have roommates. And I don't know if that's something that you want to do or be open to. And that might be a situation where if you want to live and survive and not carry balance on your credit card and not wipe away this entire inheritance, that's going to be a real reality you might have to look at.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, but off the bat, you're open to it. You're open to the roommates thing.
Possibly. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I like that. A lot of people are say, hey, I'm not going to do this. But we'll analyze these numbers of what does that change for your financial situation if you have roommates. But the beautiful thing is if you're open to it, we have options. So we got rent, $1,250. We've got utilities, $300, and you put home maintenance, $50. So that brings your housing budget to $1,600 a month, and you're making $2,000. So that means after housing, you got a roof over your head, but you got $400 a month. And then we got car insurance, $130, gas for $300, which brings your auto and transport to $430, and your groceries at $300. So your total necessities just to live is $2,330 a month, which is more than your net income. So I'm assuming that's why you've been drawing on your inheritance, is because you don't make enough money right now to afford to live. Is that correct?
I had to move. I had to relocate from Oklahoma to Washington. So I pulled out some money from moving expenses.
$30,000 to move?
Well, I had some vehicle maintenance that I needed to get done as well.
It still doesn't add to $30,000. So where's the remaining $30,000 going towards? Is it going towards lifestyle? Maybe moving a couple of thousand, car a couple of thousand, but we're still missing $25,000 there.
Let me think, because I hadn't planned on adding this to the.
It's okay if it's general living. I'm just trying to understand where the money.
I think it was general living.
Okay. So I would assume it's general living if it's gone down and we're not making enough to afford to live right now. And so we got to figure out how to get you in a spot where you can. So then we got $75 for eating out, $200 for entertainment, $30 for gifts and donations, $50 for health and fitness, $50 for personal care, $30 for pet, $20 for travel, which brings your total fund money to $455 and your total living expenses at $2,785, which is about $800 more than what you're bringing in a month right now. And that's worrisome for me looking at your financial situation, because you're not making enough money to afford to live right now, to afford your lifestyle. And so we got to look at and talk about what are some things that you can change. Off the bat, one thing that can change is your rent. If you go and find roommates on Facebook or through friends,
that's a really good idea.
That's something that instead of having a one bedroom for $1,200, you might have a two bedroom for $1,400, and your rent goes from $1,250 down to $700. And that's something real reality. If you cut your living expenses by $600, okay, great. We're almost to that $2,000 mark. We can't get rid of car insurance. You can't get rid of gas if you're driving places. You can't get rid of groceries because you need food to eat. You can get rid of eating out. $75 is not much eating out, frankly. That's a couple meals. Entertainment, we can definitely cut down. But rent is obviously the biggest thing that you can change right now. And changing a couple of things, $20 in eating out or $20 on personal care, which prohibits you from getting your hair cut or whatever it might be, then that's not going to make as big of an impact as getting a roommate. So as we kind of dive through your monthly expenses, we're going to figure out, where is all this spending going? Are we actually spending this much money, or are we spending more money every single month? And so that's what we're going to do now, is we're going to dive through the different statements that you send over and kind of figure out, where's this money going? Because right now for your living, you're not making enough.
That's why I'm here though, right?
Yep, exactly. That's why I started the show. I want this to be just a conversation where you can analyze your spending and figure out, okay, if I want to get to this point, these are the steps I need to get there. If I want to retire and be stress-free with finances, these are the steps I need to get to. If I want to leave my kids money, these are the steps I need to take. So on the debit card, we got some small transactions at Dollar Tree. These are a lot of $1 transactions. Okay. You got payroll coming through, more Dollar Tree, 7-Eleven. These are like $9 transactions, $1. Gas. You go to Dollar Tree a lot. Is that, would you get groceries there? Did you get housing supplies? What do you get at Dollar Tree a lot?
Cleaning supplies, food, dog supplies, because I have a dog.
Let's see what else we have on here. We got gas. I mean, a lot of these transactions are small. They're $1, $5, $1 on here. I don't see anything crazy on here. Walmart, you got grocery stores. Again, these are, you go to the store a lot. So I don't know. I mean, right now we have 82 transactions over the course of 30 days that are all withdrawals or spending your debit card. And a lot of them might be at Dollar Tree or at Winco Foods. So one suggestion I'd have is condense those trips down. Make a list and go once a week, and you'll probably spend less money. But there's a lot of small transactions, so it's hard to figure out how much money you're spending on these different things individually, but definitely something to figure out. Make a list, go once, and I guarantee you'll spend a little bit less money that way. We got Subway for $13. We got more gas. But during this time period, it looks like you had $2,178 come into your bank account. So just under $2,200. You spent $1,300. But the one thing I don't see is your rent on here.
I think it says Joseph Group.
I don't see any rent on here.
It's Cedar 1.
Oh, Cedar 1. Okay, I was thinking that was your credit card. Okay, so that Cedar, there's only $300 for that, for Cedar.
Because I don't pay it all at once sometimes.
Okay, so during this month, we spent $1,300 left your bank account, but we only paid $300 in rent. So what's happening with rent there if you're only paying $300 out of the $1,200 in rent? So what's happening with the rent right now? Are you behind on rent right now?
I have to set it to the middle of the month for when I get paid from my paychecks, because I don't get paid from both of my jobs until the middle of the month. So I have to pay a late fee. So I'm paying like the rest of it, or when we get off the show.
Okay, so I see another $100 on the 26th, and I see another $100 on the 27th for that. So I see $500 in payments towards your rent. So there's still a little bit of money. Are you caught up yet for March's rent, or are you behind on stuff?
I'm correct.
You're caught up. Okay. So yeah, definitely have to figure out how do we get you in a spot where you can pay that on time. You're not incurring late fees and penalties because again, that's just money that's going out of your pocket. That is not a good spot to be in. Okay. So on that charge or on that account, we spent $1,345. And then on your credit card, you did not spend any money on your credit card last month, any transactions, but you did get charged $10 in interest. This is the thing when it comes to credit cards. If you are carrying a balance on your credit card, cut it up because right now you've paid $62 in interest so far this year. And if you continue to carry that balance, you're going to pay more interest every single month. And if you pay the minimum payment right now, which is what you're paying, I believe, then it's going to take you 18 months to pay this balance off. And so your goal should be, how do I pay this off as quickly as possible in the next month or two? And then don't use the card again. I would implore you, in pulling from your inheritance and retirement accounts, I would implore you not using a credit card because that's only going to open up optionality to hurt yourself financially. And you want to play the credit score game. I mean, a lot of people do that and they find themselves in more debt. And personally, I would rather not pay interest than have a slightly higher credit score. You'll be better off paying just your credit card off in full than carrying a balance. Let's talk about your current budgeting process. So went through your current statements. Do you track your expenses at all? Do you budget? What does that look like?
I do. I keep track of the budget of what I'm going to spend on activities, swimming, any sports, clothing, gas, food, insurance, those type of things.
So do you take your statement at the end of each month and see how much money you spend on food, how much money you spend on groceries, or what are you kind of doing? You do it on Google Sheets, or what platform do you do that on?
I guess I don't have a spreadsheet of it, no.
So you have mentally pictured, hey, I'm going to spend $100 this month on this. Okay. That is a start, but it also gets lost because it's not written down on a piece of paper or on a platform. And so what I would suggest is having a plan, whether it's on a spreadsheet, whether it's a tool or platform. I use one called Copilot that I link all my accounts to, and it categorizes them automatically for me. I make some small little tweaks here and there, but I can look at there at any point and it says, hey, Bailey, you spent $500 on food this month, or you spent $100 on shopping. And I can see exactly how much money I spent last month, how much money came in, and how much money went out. And that gives me a lot better picture of knowing where my spending is going versus right now we look at your bank statements and we got 80 something transactions on here. They're really small, so you can't really tell how much you spent on food or how much money you spent on shopping that month. That gives you a lot better picture. So that's something I would suggest too, is your budgeting process needs to get a lot better. It's very difficult to waltz your way into building wealth or getting out of debt if you don't have a plan, and that's what a budget. Budget is a plan for your money. This is how much money you're making. This is how much money you're going to spend, and the rest you're going to save, invest, and pay off debt. Let's talk about your road to becoming a teacher. So right now, you're working 2 part-time jobs as a substitute teacher and a sports coach. And are you going to school at night as well for your teaching certificate, or what does that look like?
It's online.
Online? Okay. And how much does that cost? Or are you taking loans out for that, or what does that look like?
I'm just making payments on it.
How much? What's the total cost on that for next year?
Well, I got tribal scholarships last year from that because I'm Native American.
So you didn't have to come out of pocket any on that or take out any loans for that?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And so will you complete this program certificate without any debt or any payments?
Yes.
Okay, great. That's exciting. I don't want to be adding to that $50,000 student loan balance that you already have. So if you're getting your way through this certificate program without any debt or having any extra expenses, that's phenomenal. But we got to figure out, okay, your path right now is continue on the path you are, where right now you don't have enough money to make ends meet with your rent, with your expenses and your income. That's one option. Continue on the path you're going right now, not changing your rent, not changing anything, and hoping and praying that you're going to survive without any changes. And so option 2 route is, how do we increase your income? Is increasing your income look like getting a full-time job that pays you $40,000, $50,000 a year versus right now you're making about $24,000 to $30,000 a year? If you can get that pay increase and you can lower some of your expenses, you'd be okay, and you can wait until you become a teacher full-time and hopefully making 40, 50, 60K depending on the school zone and what you're teaching. Do you know what your expected income is after or becoming a full-time teacher? What would that be?
It'd be the end of next year.
And how much money would you be making roughly?
They make pretty good money. The district that I substituted in, there was a teacher there. They worked there for like 10 years and they were making $90,000.
Okay, and do you know what your starting salary would be?
I don't.
Okay, that's something I would definitely research and figure out too. Is like, what is your starting salary going to be? But even if you're making, we'll call it $50,000, and we assume with that tax bracket, you probably have about effective tax rate of 15 to 20%. You'd be looking at somewhere in the ballpark of $3,500 a month in net income, which would be a drastic increase from $2,000 right now. And that means you can afford your current expenses and save money and use some of it to pay off the debt as well. But during the meantime, my suggestion would be, okay, you either need to find a full-time job that will pay you more, that can pay you $40K plus a year. It could be working in retail shops. It could be seeing if substitute teaching can pay you more. Is it the coaching program can pay you more hours? But something that can stably pay you for 40 hours of work a week, $20 to $25 an hour at least. And that will put you in a spot where you can afford all your bills. You're making a lot more money, and you have a stable income versus right now, you said with school, with a sports program, that goes up and down depending on the season, depending on school breaks, and you can't afford to miss. Like right now, summer's coming up in 2 months, but what's your plan for that?
I'm going to coach full time. It's 5 days a week, all summer.
Okay, so you'll get more work and more hours from that.
Yes.
Okay, great.
That's happening in June.
So option 2 is get more income, coach full-time, and while you're coaching full-time, maybe it's looking for retail shops, maybe it's looking for other stuff that when that season ends of coaching, you have something that can pay you full 40 hours worth of work a week so that you don't miss a beat and you don't go into a low period with lower hours, lower income. Option 3 is, how do we change your current expenses? Get a roommate. Find a roommate that you can move in somewhere that you're paying $500 to $700 a month, and that will save you $600, $700 a month between rent and utilities. And that makes a drastic impact on your budget. And I think that's a great thing to look at and figure out, okay, if I can do this for the next 12 months or 18 months until I become a full-time teacher, let's do it. So then you don't have to worry about the financial side until you become a full-time teacher. And then when you become a full-time teacher, okay, great, I can move back out on my own and afford because I'm making more money. Or option 4 is, how do I do a combination of both of that? How do I make more money with a full-time job versus 2 part-time jobs and get a roommate to lower my living expenses? And I think that's the ultimate kind of route that could change your financial situation drastically over the next 18 months, because if you're saving $600 a month, plus you're making an extra $500 to $1,000 a month, that is over a $12,000 swing over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. And that can change your financial trajectory and future drastically between the debts we have, between your savings and your investments, and really change the future. So what do you think about those different options?
Those are great options.
What do you think you're leaning towards?
Probably getting a roommate and then looking at more of a full-time job after summer that will help me to finish school.
Awesome. Well, I like that. You're leaning towards option 4, which is combining getting the best of both worlds. Lower the expenses, bring the income up. And then that, even with the income going up, we got to figure out, what is your plan and trajectory moving forward? Is your goal to retire at 65? Is your goal to retire at 60? What does your pension look like if you work at these schools? How long do you have to work at these schools? These are things you have to start thinking about and building a plan out for. If you're a part of the school system for maybe it's 15 years, maybe it's 10 years, maybe it's 20 years, you get the pension, you can start building those numbers into your retirement plans. But it's hard to fully build that into that until you hit that number, because what if you're 1 year short and you get sick of teaching kids and you say, hey, I'm not going to do this anymore, and you forfeit your retirement? There's things that could happen in life, and you decide to stop working, you decide, hey, I'm going to go back and become a flight attendant again, and you give up the pension. And so what I want you to do is set yourself up for success where you're not relying on Social Security, you're not reliant on a school pension, so that you have optionality. And that means you can live life on your own terms. You can decide where you work, what you do, and how you get there. And so to do that, we have to pay off debt and we have to invest and save a lot of money. And so right now, we've got credit cards and student loans. My first priority for debt payoff is credit cards. That has to be paid off in the next 2 months. If you're working full-time this summer, let's cut some of these expenses back, shopping, food, really bring it down to the bare bones and get rid of the credit card debt, because that's just not a good spot to have. And then the student loans, you have to start looking at, if you're going to look at public student loan forgiveness programs, you got to figure out, what criteria do I need to even apply for this, and what is the likelihood that you will get this forgiven? And I know there's a lot of different stuff around public student loan forgiveness programs. Does teaching at these different schools qualify for it? Have you made or missed any payments that would disqualify you from this? And how much longer would it take for you to qualify for forgiveness, for even the opportunity to apply for it? Because one missed payment can screw that up for you. And that can really just change your financial situation. So I'm not saying, I don't want you to be in a spot where you fully depend on that And for some reason, that doesn't work out because the likelihood of public student loan forgiveness, I think, is if you make 10 years of qualifying payments, you should qualify. But again, it depends on your loans, the type of loans, if you missed any payments, and you have to work for a qualifying employer, I believe, for the entire 10 years. So that means you have to at least work for the next 10 years on these student loans and making the minimum payments on it. So my perspective would be, okay, you can either wait 10 years for the possibility of public student loan forgiveness, or can you draw up a plan that you can pay these loans off in the next 3 years, the next 5 years if you get a full-time job working as a teacher. If you go and make $50,000 or $60,000 as a full-time teacher, and right now you're making $24,000, you can live off $24,000, can you take $15,000 a year and pay off these student loans in 3 years? And then guess what? You never have to worry about the student loans ever again after that fact. So these are things I'd be thinking about and looking at in terms of a budget. What is your minimum payment on the student loans? How much can I throw at these a month once I get a full-time teaching role? And what qualifications do I need to even apply for public student loan forgiveness? Because me personally, I wouldn't want to sit around for 10 years in the hopes and prayer that I get my student loans forgiven. I'd rather be action-oriented, pay them off in 2 to 4 years, and then not have to worry about them for the next 6. And then during the next 6 years, you're saving and investing a lot of money. That is my personal approach and take. Some people might argue with me on that. They'll say, hey, your student loans are 5%, pay the minimum. But I'm more in the boat of, hey, pay it off, get it done, and you never have to worry about it again. The last thing is father's inheritance. So you said you want to leave this inheritance to your kids.
Yes.
I think that is a great goal to have. But the issue, my concern for you right now is you don't have enough in investments and savings right now that you can comfortably retire without a pension, without Social Security. And so you're going to be relying on that inheritance when you're 65 or 67 or 70 and wanting to retire. You're going to be relying on that inheritance unless you start taking action, making changes right now on your own financial future.
I agree.
So what I would implore on you is start attacking, pay off the credit card debt, lower expenses with the roommate, make more money with a new full-time job until you become a teacher, and then anything left over, you need to start saving up an emergency fund, probably first and foremost. And then we have student loans or retirement accounts we're going to look at. I'm in the boat of how do we get the student loans paid off in the next 2 to 4 years as quickly as possible because I don't like having debt on the balance sheet. And so attack that. And then after that, if you're throwing $1,000 a month at student loans, you can then throw $1,000 a month at retirement. Or the alternative approach that some people would suggest is pay the minimums on student loans, so however much that is, and the difference, put that towards investment accounts. And I don't think you can go wrong with either. I don't think materially the difference outcome would be drastic. It just depends if you are truly investing. If you're going to go spend that on food or a new car or shopping or something, then you're better off paying the debt off as quickly as possible. But if you have, say you do take the route of, hey, I'm going to pay off student loans on minimum payments, and then I'm going to put $500 a month towards your investment account until the time you're 67. Do you know how much money you'd have when you're 67 years old? If you start with $40,000 today and you put in $500 a month for the next 23 years?
No.
You'd have roughly $540,000. And that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, a lot more money than we have today. Is that enough to retire when you're 67 without Social Security, without a pension? I don't know. I can't answer that question for you. I don't know what your lifestyle is going to be like. I don't know what your living situation is going to be like. I would personally be in the boat of that number needs to be a little bit higher because the 4% withdrawal rule is you can withdraw 4% of your retirement account, hopefully never run out of money over the next 30 years. But with this, you're only withdrawing $20,000 a year, which isn't that much money. Yes, hopefully you have Social Security at the time and hopefully you have a pension. If you do, then that's a situation that could work for you. Realistically, I'd say, okay, how do we get to $1 million by the time you're 67? And that would involve investing probably about $1,200 a month from the time you're 44 until you're 67. And so you have to start making that kind of game plan backwards. If you want to have $1 million when you're 67, you need $1,200 a month to invest starting today. What does that look like? How do I improve my income to get to that point? How do I decrease my expenses? And how do I get rid of these debt payments so I don't have to worry about that either and I can invest that money? Right now, you really have to figure out your situation is a little complex because it's like you're trying to go after the student loan forgiveness program and we don't make enough money today to live off of for the rest of your life. Make enough money to even live today. So my main, suggestions for you is credit cards. We got to cut those up. Stop using it. Number 2 is how do we increase your income with a full-time job? Number 3, lower expenses with a roommate. And then number 4, lower expenses, bringing up the income is going to allow you to pay off the debt on the credit cards as quickly as possible. I would then go in the balance after that towards paying off these student loans as quickly as possible. And then I'd be investing as much as possible once I pay off all the debt. Does that make sense?
That's interesting. That $1,200 a month to have $1 million when you're 67.
Yep. And that's starting at 44. And that is due to compound interest, but also this is why financial education is very important because if you, in theory, had started when you're 23, you'd have $4.2 million when you're 67. And that's a lot of money. Right now, we got to play catch up right now because you're in your 40s and we don't have much saved for retirement. We have debt still. So we got to figure out how do we start changing habits, start changing your financial situation now with paying off debt and start being able to invest. Because right now you're not in a spot where you can pay off debt or where you can invest because we're not making enough money and our expenses are too high. So that's the first thing we have to change is the expenses and the income. Then after that, we have to figure out the plan of paying off debt and investing from here because you want to leave your inheritance to your kids. But if we don't have enough money to retire when you're 67, that inheritance is going to be going towards you. And I want you to be in a spot where you have the ability to leave your kids inheritance if that's what you want. So that means you start making decisions today because every single day, every single year that you wait to start making changes to your financial future, it gets harder and harder to reach your goals. What is the worst financial mistake you think you've made in your life?
Student loans.
Student loans. If that's the worst decision you've made in your life, I'd be in the boat of, hey, how do we pay this off as quickly as possible? I do think, hey, if you work for the government or a nonprofit for 10 years, you get forgiven. That's a phenomenal situation to be in. But given that you're at the forefront of that time period of you haven't even started working for those organizations for a day, that means we're pushing off at least 10 years in the future. If you were on year 7 or on year 6, I'd say, okay, great. Probably wait until that time period and see if they get forgiven and then make a decision. But right now, since we're at that very beginning of that stage, you still have a year before you can even start working as a full-time teacher. I would be figuring out how do I pay these off as quickly as possible.
Okay. I wish I'd been paid attention to like personal finance class in high school. I wish I had paid attention to how my mom did her like checking accounts and paid the house mortgage and deposited checks and how she dealt with money. But I just shielded from all that. But it's not really a shield. It's a tool that you really need to learn that I hadn't. So thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, watch another video. YouTube thinks this video on screen will be your favorite.